Those were the goals we launched this week.
Good morning. Rise in freedom. That's a beautiful day in America. Welcome to the Wake Up America Show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. We're going to have such a fun show today. Happy July, Maria Edenbow. What's up, Jimmy, Joe, Patty? Look at those beautiful names and faces in the chat. How you doing, guys? So many reasons to smile. So many reasons to stare. Have you guys heard of the Gen Z stare? The basic definition is the look that you get when you try to have a conversation, a sincere conversation with these kids. Now, the experts say that the Gen Z stare is a mix of social anxiety, COVID lockdown hangover, and something to be soothed with lowered voices and endless patience. Well, that stare has now become hardened into a sneer. And the sneer was earned. These were children who watched a parent open a foreclosure envelope at the kitchen table in 2008. They grew up. They went to buy a house. It was inflated, clean out of reach. Only 4.5% of Zoomers own a home today, the widest generational gap ever recorded. And when you trace the misery and the data back to its source, it doesn't start with COVID. It starts back in 2010. This is the year the foreclosure crisis ended. So we're going to name the carpenter who sewed the bottom rung off that ladder, and we'll give you a hint. It's not the free market. The left is going to tell you this generation was robbed by capitalism. The only cure is bigger government. The youth, always so naive. So after we talk about the broken money, we'll get into the same broken money that's making the Great American Vacation disappear. Yeah, Maria. Lots of people are not going to be able to go on vacation in July. A Texas teacher named Tina Morgan watched the pump roll past $200 this April to fill the family RV. She had to cut her summer from $8,000 down to $3,000. Meanwhile, a one-day Disney ticket breaks $200 for one ticket. And the right to skip a line that used to be free runs about $450 a day. So nearly half the parents in the line at Disney borrowed the money to be there. The top quintile buys the premium pass and they never feel a thing, while the bottom half just stays home. So we're all sort of sorting ourselves out by class here in America, and we're going to walk down the price ladder and talk about the cheaper road for vacations, which turns out to be the better one. So we're not going to tackle these stories alone. We're going to have young Voices commentator Maggie Anders. She's going to answer for her own generation, whether the fight is still in them or whether the energy has drained from rebellion and Gen Z stares down into pure refusal. Then we're going to head to Jefferson City, where a single county judge struck down 40 Missouri abortion laws in one ruling. And Camellia Peterson of Americans for Prosperity breaks down what one judge, one ballot measure, and a pile of out-of-state activist cash just did this state. If you guys aren't following Camellia over on Facebook, you guys are missing out, because you want to talk about out-of-state money. All of these Democrats have been swarming Camelia's pages, coming after her. And a lot of Democrats posing as conservatives. All of these people, Camellia is just getting blasted every single day on Facebook, and honestly, I'm here for it. It's because I've been there, and so now it's not that I enjoy seeing my friends suffer, but it is. I mean, it's not Schadenfreude, because I obviously don't want her to suffer, but it's just funny because now she kind of gets to see what I've been putting up with. Now we've got a lot to talk about today. Obviously, there's no show Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because rather than going on vacation to Las Vegas, I'm going to Las Vegas for work. So I'll be out the next few days for Freedom Fest. I will get to hang out with Amy J. Easley for a few minutes. Hopefully we get to have a little fun. Amy will be there. She's in the airport waiting to board the plane for Vegas. So good for you, Amy. You're getting out there a day early. We're heading out tomorrow morning. So we'll be out tomorrow, Thursday and Friday. So no Wake Up America show. So what I highly recommend you guys do is you got to unlock that bonus content today. Okay. So if you want to see the Wake Up America show's bonus content, your last chance to see it for a few days. So what do? Drop some Rumble rants or head to forlibertyshop.com. That's the number, forlibertyshop.com. Byron Norris says, same here. Lots of weirdos online. Yeah. What's up, C-Hef? Top of the morning to you, Johnny Rankin. Oh, it's good to see you. Are you guys enjoying the Graham Plattner fallout? So this Graham Plattner guy He's the Democratic Senate candidate in Maine. He's blue collar. He's progressive, seemingly a true Mainer. And for many, he seemed too good to be true. Maybe he was. I didn't plan to talk about this, but the story is just too juicy. Graham Plattner was endorsed by many high-level Democrats coming out and defending him. Bernie Sanders, they're putting the heat on him a little bit over on MSNBC last month. Take a listen to this.
At any point over the course of the past week, have you considered dropping out of the race?
No, not once.
Okay, that was a month ago over on MSNBC when the first sexual assault allegations came out against this guy. Now, this is what Republicans have to deal with in every election. Remember, the Democrats were saying these guys that were accusing. Let's just hear it from them from their own mouths what they thought about the accusers.
Is that even according to the New York Times piece, they said there was no harm, no injury, there was toxicity, and there was verbal intimidation, which I condemn. But Graham has made it clear that there was no evidence of violence. That to me is a red line.
No evidence. Whenever somebody's lying or they want to like cover something up, I think there was a scene in The Office where it's like, there's some famous show where there's like, where they just kind of pretend like they're saying something. Let's hear this from this commie puke Ro Khanna again. What were you saying? No evidence of violence? What's the word? Violence? No evidence of violence?
Damn. But Graham has made it clear that there was no evidence of violence.
No evidence of violence. What word was that? What was Ro Khanna saying? What was he trying to say there? Let me hear it one more time. There's no evidence of what?
Graham has made it clear that there was no evidence of violence.
No evidence of violence. Violence. He doesn't want to say the name. Ro Khanna. Good one, Brad. No evidence of violence. Yes, those are the people sticking up for him. But the E. Jean Carroll, that lady, totally the psychopath who wrote about how she fantasized about rape. Her allegations against Donald Trump, totally credible. Now, just don't worry, guys, because Graham Plattner has been through a lot in life.
But in order to win the Senate, you got to win Maine. What do you make of Graham Plattner?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, this has been a big week for Graham Plattner. Listen, this is a guy who has served this country, who has gone through some really tough things in his life, has made some big mistakes, has been open about those mistakes, and it's going to be a decision for...
It is going to be a decision. Has he really been open about these mistakes? Sounds like everybody else has to get him to open up about these mistakes. It's just, well, at least Elizabeth Warren was sticking by him.
Endorsing Graham Plattner for Senate in Maine. And here's the reason why. Graham Plattner is the real deal. That's my kind of man.
That's my kind of man. Well, listen, I mean, a lot of women do have rape fantasies. Maybe Elizabeth Warren's just telling us a little something about her proclivities. Now, lest you be... Good morning, all. Colton for Liberty. Lest you be disabused of the notion of violence. The violence in the city. Here's the people who recruited Graham Plattner to run in Maine, and they sound exactly like you would expect.
And at this point, you hadn't vetted Graham Plattner. You hadn't done a full scrub of who he is. How did you go about vetting him? And why did you?
We paid a nice firm a whole chunk of money and got some stuff back. Some of what you've seen on the news we got back. Other stuff we didn't.
That stuff.
Did the vetting process turn up the tattoo that became so controversial?
No.
The Reddit posts, did that turn up in the vetting process?
They probably spent over $100,000 trying to find that out. They couldn't find the Nazi tattoo. Why do they have vocal fry like this? It's you're a man. Speak like a man.
The firm sent us a thing, and it had some of the posts, but it didn't have all of them.
Ew, what is wrong with that?
And what did you think about that? How did you think your way through the fact that he had posted these things on social media?
I said none of this will or should stop him from becoming a U.S. senator.
And what was your
Clearly the
thinking
voters
there?
agree. I think if what the voters wanted were people who were grown in vats and had never done or said anything that they might regret their entire lives, we'd have a very different country. Part of our thesis here is that people do not want their candidates grown in vats. They want people who are real human beings, and they want people who do not look and sound like the vat-grown people who've been leading this country off a cliff.
Oh, God. Average liberal male. There's a famous clip. Yes, yes. To everybody, you guys must have seen. You guys must have seen this viral clip from years ago. This was a real talk show dealing with people who had vocal fry or like who had actual vocal phonic problems.
Een eenvoudige behandeling. Ja, wat was dat precies?
Wel,
excuseer.
Wel, ik heb dus enorm veel last van keelontstekingen. En dat had blijkbaar te maken met mijn amandelen.
Met uw amandelen.
En mijn dokter heeft me dus aangeraden om een operatie te laten gebeuren. En met dit als gevolg.
Marijke, jij had een normaal leven daarvoor. En toen plots kom je uit narcose en dan merk je dat het leven niet meer hetzelfde zal zijn. Hoe reageer je daar dan op?
Ja, eerst met heel veel ongeloof.
I refuse to believe that this is a real language.
Ongeloof is eigenlijk het juiste woord. Ongeloof is eigenlijk het juiste woord dat Rijke hier hanteert. Dat was bij mij dus ook mijn eerste gewaarwording dat ik dacht dat kan
Now
niet.
that is a real guy with a real problem, dysphonia in his voice. It's kind of like what RFK Jr. has. I'm your Secretary of Health and Human Services. And the interviewer is trying not to laugh.
Excuseer. Dus je probeert dan terug je toekomst.
Ik begrijp echt niet wat er hier aan het gebeuren is.
Excuseer, echt. Excuseer, dames en heren.
Ook soms de lieve woordjes.
All right, now let's maybe find that guy again. Okay, I think I accidentally closed their thing. Hold on. Let's see if I can find that guy again. Here come the men in black. Hold on, here you go. What do you need vocal fry for when you got this?
Black Americans really created democracy in this country.
Right. That's exactly right.
How they literally made something from nothing.
This 4th of July, I say celebrate a Black woman that you know, because whether it's an invention that she made or whether it's the very democracy that still hangs by a thread right now, there is a Black woman to thank.
Somalis have always seen themselves as a fabric of this nation.
The immigrants from all over the world, Somalia, India, wherever they're from, Latin America, Africa, that immigrants have built this country.
You cannot talk about any achievement that the city of Boston has had in safety, jobs, and economic development, in education, without talking about the Somali community.
Black America.
Amy, we're going to make you laugh this morning, Amy. If that didn't make you laugh, Amy, then this sure will.
David, Goldman, Blackstone, BlackRock, they're all here. And think of it, I'm making them all geniuses. Every one of them is a genius. Is anybody doing poorly? If you are, I guess you have a couple of guys that went short. Those poor bastards, I mean, they're in big trouble. They're being wiped out. the short guys. I never like short guys because they're betting against the country, so that's okay. But
I never liked short guys. Oh, wait. Here's the guy with the vocal fry guy. Hold on.
And what did you think about that? How did you
Why
think
do
your way
all
through
liberals sound like they are just awash in estrogen?
the fact that he had posted these things on social media?
I said none of this will or should stop him from becoming a U.S. Senator.
And what was
Clearly
your
the
thinking
voters
there?
agree. I think if what the voters wanted were people who were grown in vats and had never done or said anything that they might regret their entire lives, we'd have a very different country. Part of our thesis here is that people do not want their candidates grown.
Would you still listen to the Wake Up America show if I talked with a vocal fry? Would you... Good morning, rise in freedom. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. Would you still listen to my show if I talk like that? No, God, please, no. Oh, God. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson, and I talk like a man. You should act like a man. Wait, this reminds me of that scene from The Godfather. I want to do that scene from The Godfather. You should act like a man.
I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do.
This is what I want to do. This is what I want to do to lib turds when they talk like that.
What to do? I don't know what to do.
You can act like a man. What's the matter with you? Is this how you turn down a Hollywood Pinocchio that cries like a woman? What can I do? What can I do? What is it? We endorse Graham Plattner. What can we do? What can we do?
Are you satisfied with the explanations he's given for the controversies his campaign has faced right now? Are you concerned about what we've heard?
I met with Graham Plattner today. We're going to beat Susan Collins and take back the Senate.
Yes.
So you're saying that Janet Mills, your preferred candidate, there's been rattlings that she should get back in. You're standing behind Graham Plattner, to be clear here?
We're going to beat Susan Collins and take back the Senate.
Does
Yes.
Democrats taking behind Graham Plattner, does that hurt their credibility in attacking Ken Paxton?
We're going to beat Susan Collins and take back the Senate. Any other subject you got? Any other subject? Yes.
I am the Senate.
Yes. You.
Now, I know I had a bunch of other topics I wanted to talk about today, but it's just too good. It's just too good. Remember when Bernie Sanders promoted the Very Fine People hoax against Donald Trump?
When you have a president commenting on a march by Nazis and white supremacists who then declares, well, there are nice people on both sides. Mr. President, there are no nice Nazis.
I'm not overly impressed by a squad of media running around saying, what do you think about the tattoo on Graham Plattner's chest? Between you and me, there might be one or two more important issues.
When you have a president...
There might be one or two more important issues. I'm Bernie Sanders.
I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that Graham Plattner is the next senator from the state of Maine.
Oh, Bernie. Bernie. Really, Chuck? Oh, yes. Graham Plattner has a lot of issues.
Those opportunities to elect a new leader is in Maine. We have a competitive contest. Democrats just nominated Graham Plattner, despite past offensive comments about a tattoo associated, or past offensive comments. He's got this tattoo that's associated with the Nazi symbol. He also said he didn't understand its meaning. He's covered it up. And he's also faced allegations from former girlfriends of abusive behavior, which he denies. Do you think Graham Plattner has the character to serve in the United States Senate?
Well, this is what campaigns are for. He certainly has a lot of issues and a lot of questions to answer and address. And I think the people of Maine are going to give a lot of examination to this going through in this election. For me, I certainly hope we pick up a seat here. For me and people of the state of New Jersey, dear God, we need to get the Senate back so we can start checking this out-of-control president. And that's why, again, I'm going to be doing everything I can all over my state of New Jersey and everywhere I can to help.
I got 1 million of these clips. I got 1 million of them. You got John Fetterman here. Hold on.
I am here because Washington needs fighters, and Graham Plattner is the fighter we need. You bet.
You bet.
I said to myself, that's my kind of man.
You know how, I guess we know how Elizabeth Warren likes it. Welcome to the Wake Up America Show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. We're glad and thankful to have you here. Click the like button if you haven't already. And why don't you guys just follow your leader? Byron Norris over there in the chat, gifting, being such a little gifter. He's trying to unlock that bonus content. Give him a little help. Can you bless me with something?
Can you bless me with something?
Oh gosh.
Oh gosh. Money-wise.
Okay, so can you, if you've been laughing during these segments this morning, drop a $5 in the tip jar, guys. Drop a little, gift a little sub, drop a little $5, or head to forlibertyshop.com and unlock the bonus content when you make a purchase at forlibertyshop.com during the live show. That helps to unlock the bonus content. We're so grateful to have you here. If you've been having a good time this morning, if you've been laughing at the vocal fry, if you've been having a good time, then drop a little gift sub, drop a little tip, and bless me with something money-wise. The Democrats have got this speech rehearsed down to a pat these days.
A lot has been said about me today through anonymous allegations. I thought it was important that you see and hear from me directly.
I wanted to directly address the troubling, serious, and false allegations against me.
These allegations of sexual assault are flat false. They're absolutely false.
Any accusation of non-consensual behavior is categorically false.
They also come on the eve of an election where I have been the frontrunner candidate for governor in California.
Regardless of the inaccuracy of the reporting, but mindful of the political reality it will inflict.
I do not suggest to you in any way that I'm perfect or that I'm a saint.
I've been deeply humbled by the faith Mainers have put in me.
I think you know who I am. For over 20 years, I have served the public.
You have welcomed me into your homes, into your places of work, into your restaurants, into your houses of worship.
I also apologize to you if in any way you have doubted your support for me.
Throughout it all, you never turned your back on me.
This weekend, I'm going to spend time with my family and friends.
You're taking the time to reflect on the best path forward.
And it's time to say goodbye. Eric Swalwell, rest in peace. Graham Plattner, rest in peace. Democrats certainly do have an issue here, don't they?
A lot has been said about me today through anonymous allegations. I thought it was important
relations with that woman.
that you see and hear from me directly.
I never
These
told
allegations
anybody
of
to
sexual
lie.
assault
Not a
flat,
single time.
False.
Never.
They're absolutely false.
These
They
allegations
did not
are
happen.
false.
They have never.
And I need to go back to
Not have sexual relations with that woman. Here's the one good Democrat, what he had to say about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's terrible. And that's why my heart goes out to that poor woman. And now also what he's put all those other women that when the New York Times described how abusive he was. Now, so many Democrats dismissed that or said it's not a big deal or we don't believe it or is politically motivated. Well, the woman that had the courage to come forward, she is identified as a progressive. And now she says that he raped me.
And notice this, guys, because this is how little the left cares about what happens to conservative women, was that there were conservative right-wing women who had accused Graham Plattner of this kind of behavior, and the left didn't believe them. But now that a progressive woman has come out, now all the Democrats have something to say about it, which just goes to show you can do whatever you want to conservative women. But if you lay your finger on a progressive woman, that's when you're in trouble.
Came in my home without my consent as well, too. So
Senator, I'm sorry. What would you like to say tonight, if you could say anything to Plattner himself?
I don't have anything to say to that trash bag, and now he's a dead man walking politically. But now for me, my thoughts are with the poor women that have been brutalized by him. And I want to salute the courage for the woman to come forward, and all the people that dismissed the women, that he abused in the New York Times thing, and all the people that sent Plattner checks or cashed checks from Plattner. Maybe look in the mirror, the kind of person that you were pushing, and now that put the Senate, the majority path in serious risk. We all, any normal person could have seen what was coming, the kind of person it is. Now, he was the one Democrat that refused to not just call him out what he is.
Welcome to the Wake Up America Show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. If you guys are having a good time today, I hope you are. Make sure you click that like button. If today's your first time watching the Wake Up America Show and you're like, this show is hilarious, then click the follow button as well. We'd love to have you be a regular guest, and we're a motley crew over on Rumble. Click the follow button so that you could be like as cool as Midwest Gunner. If Midwest Gunner were a little bit cooler, the only thing that would make him cooler is if he had that little red castle next to his name. But I think we know how to get that done. Somebody, Joel Ledamore, looks like he just gifted a sub to Joni. So, Joni, you're all renewed. Amy J. Easley, she was about to sail away, sail away, sail away. Hope you guys are all having a wonderful morning this morning. I've got a lot of great content. We've got great guests. Camellia is going to be here at 8 a.m. Central. We're going to talk about how she's getting absolutely brutally ratioed by Democrats every single day on Facebook. And I am laughing my off about it. I'm having an absolute blast just laughing at her getting roasted by Democrats every single day because she's out there fighting for your freedom if you happen to live in Missouri to try to get people to vote yes on 4, yes on 5 to abolish the income tax. We'll see you in, she's boarding in a few, Amy J. Easley. See you in Sin City. Have a safe flight, everybody. Tell Amy, safe flight, Amy. We'll see you in Las Vegas. But we've got some great topics, some great content for you today. And we're going to play it for you on the other side of the break. I'm only going to go away for a couple minutes because I want to play some clips for you. We're going to talk about how summer vacations are getting way more expensive than they've ever been before. Stephanie's really excited to go to Las Vegas, but all she wants to do is see the new George Washington movie, which we have 2 tickets for. So we're going to get to see young Washington while we're there in Las Vegas. Some people like to gamble. Stephanie wants to go see a movie. So we haven't been able to see a movie since the baby was born. So listen, I'm just going to take a quick little commercial break, okay, so I can set up the videos so we can talk about how expensive vacations are. We can talk about how why Generation Z's Gen Z stare has turned into a Gen Z sneer. And then we got Maggie Moda at 8:30 after Camellia. So it's going to be a phenomenal show. Don't go away. Go to the grift shop. Do a little grifting. If you guys haven't stocked up on your Founding Flavors coffee, right now is the perfect time to do it. And subscribe. Get it delivered to your door once a month, maybe every 2 weeks. It's a Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network. 'Tis the year of our Lord, 1801. President Trump Jefferson casts his gaze o'er the sovereign Potomac and beholds a most wretched spectacle upon the waters. From the cursed shores of Tripoli and the welfare coffers of distant Minnesota comes the brazen Captain Ilhan Omar, commanding her fleet of Barbary pirates. She demands her ransom, billions in reparations. Yet one instrument of fortitude suffices, a steaming chalice of Jeffersonian Java, bold and unapologetic from 4 Liberty Shop. No more tribute to rogues, he thunders, and dispatches the Navy and Marines to smash Omar's fleet asunder. Trump Jefferson stands triumphant as Omar's plunder meets the end it deserved back in Minnesota. Jeffersonian Java, the coffee that gives true Americans the courage to refuse tribute and rebuke fraud. Procure yours at 4libertyshop.com and make America caffeinated again.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that at the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian, and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
1974. A magical era when American parents looked at their precious offspring and thought, you know what would be great? Positioning them directly in the crumple zone of a 3-ton steel land yacht. Welcome to the Wayback, the rear-facing child containment unit, where safety features consisted entirely of Dad yelling, don't touch that handle, at 70 miles an hour. Getting there with a real joy. You just had to hurdle the middle row, scale Mount Coleman cooler, and claim your rightful place on the premium sun-baked vinyl. Air conditioning? Please. That was exclusively for the front seat elite. Back here, climate control was just the gentle cross breeze of raw exhaust fumes and your dad's Winston 100s wafting through the cracked tailgate window. We were basically being slow roasted like rotisserie chickens. But hey, it built character. Seatbelts? Oh, you mean those annoying metal buckles permanently wedged deep in the seat crevices? Since no one used them, the Wayback doubled as a zero-gravity physics experiment. One sharp turn, and you were sliding across that slick vinyl like a human curling stone. A sudden tap of the brakes meant you were instantly and violently promoted to the middle seat. It was a beautiful, feral existence. We spent hours staring down the terrified drivers behind us, making grotesque faces through the glass. Because what else were we going to do? Look at our phones? By hour 6, the geopolitical boundaries were established. If your sibling's sweaty knee crossed the imaginary center line, it was an act of treason punishable by a swift pinch. But honestly, there was nothing quite like watching the world recede, entirely unsupervised, fueled by nothing but lukewarm, red dye-filled high sea, and the sheer thrill of surviving a road trip with zero headrest. We were the untethered survivors of the great American vacation. So, were you part of the Wayback elite? Or were you the poor soul wedged in the middle seat next to a leaking ice chest?
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network. Summer is here. If you're planning on taking the family out of town for vacation, you might want to use AI and do some economics first. Well, the bill to gas up the family RV crossed $200 for the first time this April. And Wall Street Journal reported on a woman named Tina Morgan, says she's struggling to pick up a vacation bill. She's a part-time teacher in Texas. Her husband's a military veteran. For 2 summers running, they'd loaded their RV with their 50-gallon tank, and they'd run a months-long loop across the country. This year, the plan that they had was to go to 7 national parks. Then they looked at their fuel bills. They sat her husband down. She sat her husband down for what she called heart-to-heart. Money-wise, she told him, we need to cut this in half. So 7 parks became 2 short trips. So they went to the Great Lakes and Mammoth Cave in Kentucky. They bought an air fryer to cook on the road so they'd stop eating out for every meal. $8,000 this summer came down to $3,000. So the easy version of the story, of course, is inflation squeezed a family and they tighten the belt. And when gas comes back down, they loosen again. Great American Family Vacation, the road trip, the week at the park, the one ritual that used to bind families across every income bracket in this country. Well, it's quietly being sorted by class. Good morning, Barney. Those were the days. Those were the days. Well, the top of this country still buys the premium pass. The bottom is pretty much priced clean out of Disney vacations unless they put them on a credit card. The middle class, well, we're all just buying air fryers. So today we're going to follow the money all the way up to the most insane price tags in American leisure vacations. And then we're going to come back down the thing that the Morgans found waiting for them at the end of the cheaper road. So when the Morgans RV refuel passed $200 in April, that triggered a full teardown of their summer. So they were going to 7 national parks down to 2. They cut their costs from $8,000 down to $3,000. The head of the U.S. Travel Association framed it like this, saying, for years, Americans refused to let inflation and tariffs touch their travel. Now, he says, everybody has a breaking point, and we're watching American travelers hit it in real time. So this is the moment that the dam broke on the American family vacation. 52% of U.S. workers say they're staying home more this summer, according to a monster poll of more than 1,000 Americans, using the staycation to save on dining, entertainment, and driving. So this is half of the working population deciding the trip is now not worth what it costs. And on the booking side of these vacations, the signal is just as loud because customers on Hotels.com are using the budget filter 1,800% more than they were last year. So not double what they were last year. They're using the budget vacation planner 18 times more than they did last year. So traveler confidence in the economy has fallen for 4 straight months to its lowest point since 2023, with more people now willing to walk away from a flight or a hotel because the price is simply too high. A Boston nurse who took 10 international trips last year watched airfare to Portugal jump from $600 to $1,400 and booked trains to New York and to Montreal instead. When the people who travel the most start pulling back, the softening is not at the margin. This is at the core now of the American vacation. And the ones still going, they're clawing the money out of everything else. So a Priceline report this spring from 2,500 Americans found parents are 34% more likely than non-parents to have already cut everyday expenses to fund a trip. How far will they go? Well, 83% will give up alcohol first. Yeah. That's what they're giving up on the vacations. 45% are giving up dining out, and 20% said they would give up sex before they gave up a vacation. That's people clinging to the last thing that still feels like the good life. Now climb the price ladder to the happiest place on earth, where a one-day adult pass to Disneyland broke the $200 mark for the first time and now runs up to $206 on the busiest days at Disney. 5 years ago, the Skip the Line Fast Pass was free. Today, it comes in 3 paid tiers of Lightning Lane, and the top tier reaches $449 per person per day. So the ride didn't change. Nothing's changed. Disney just discovered that they could charge you $450 to stay in a line that used to be free to skip. A typical 4-day Walt Disney World trip for a family of 4 staying at a value-priced Disney hotel ran $4,266 in 2024, up from $3,235 years earlier. And that was already adjusted for inflation, and that's still before food and transportation. So $4,266 is the basics, okay? Not your food, not your transportation. Nearly 80% of that increase came from new charges for services and add-ons on your vacations that used to be free. So line skipping, they didn't just mostly raise the ticket. They unbundled the magic and then they sold it back to you one piece at a time. Yvonne Kindle, a bank compliance manager from Delaware, lived that itemized bill. She dreamed for years of taking her family afford to Disney. And then when she finally went, 2 days of tickets ran $1,123. The line skip passes another $208, one duck-themed meal $219, and 2 Mickey Mouse bubble ones $60. Bubble ones. Her total hit $3,000. Her parents had covered the flights and the hotel. She spent the trip too stressed to enjoy it. She's never going back to Walt Disney, she says. So Disney's experiences division, which includes the theme parks, went from 41% of Disney's total operating income in 2019 to 70% by 2023. One paid add-on alone, the line skip service, once was called Genie Plus, generated more than $724 million in pre-tax revenue at Walt Disney World alone, just that one park between 2021 and 2024. So that the Fast Pass becomes 70% of the margin. So the squeeze has become the product there at Disney. 45% of families who visited Disney resorts with children went into debt to afford the trip. Yeah, according to LendingTree survey of 2,000 families. So sit with that. Nearly half the parents standing in line for Space Mountain borrowed money to stand there. The childhood memory is now routinely financed, which means that the price of the trip outlives the trip. It follows the family home as a balance on a card long after your tan fades. And the youngest travelers are the deepest in debt for this. 8 in 10 of Gen Z say they will lean on credit card rewards and loyalty points to cover this summer's trip, which is the highest of any generation, against 60% of we millennials and 19% of boomers. A generation that can't afford the house or a car is now financing the vacation on a carried balance that it's going to pay down long after they get home. Now, Disney's own timeshare members received a 47-page post-visit survey, mostly about their household finances. One question asked how likely they were to be receiving or managing an inheritance or to experience the loss of a family member or loved one over the next 5 years. Well, Melissa Buckley of Indiana is exactly who that question is built for. She saved for 10 years and still could not afford the trip until a generous inheritance finally came through. Her family left at dawn the day after Christmas. They drove to Orlando with snacks packed in a cooler to save on food, and the trip ran $6,000. There's no way, she said, we could afford this from our savings alone. So the Disney is quite literally modeling its demand around when your relatives die. So they're asking you, do you plan to lose a family member in the next 5 years and receive an inheritance so that they could plan on when your family member dies? Cellblock says, I'm booked for next month. Family of 4. Above $6,000 is estimated. Jesus. No, God. $6,000. So touring plans built out what a 2-day Disney visits cost against what families in each income tier actually budget for a year of vacation. And the trip ran over budget for the bottom 40% of earners before they even bought a single meal. The bank data splits the country the same way. The Bank of America Institute found nearly 4 in 10 households under $66,000 have no summer travel plans at all. And their travel spending fell year over year, while higher earners ramped theirs up. Even as the personal savings rate dropped to 3.6%, which is the lowest since 2022, a Harris poll for the Journal found 74% of families now believe experiences like cruises and theme parks have just become financially out of reach. This is the K-shaped economy. and wearing mouse ears. The top quintile buys the premium pass. The bottom quintile stays in the car or stays home. So now here's where the story turns, because the same Harris poll had found that lower priced, nature-focused vacations are starting to gain ground on the pricey resort and theme park trips. So the money isn't disappearing, it's just relocating to where the value actually lives. And the math is interesting on this one. The 4-day Disney trip runs $6,000 to $9,000 for a family of 4, but a full week in the Great Smoky Mountains, which is America's most visited park, runs $1,200 to $1,500, and there's no entrance fee, no fast pass. The $80 America the Beautiful pass covers a carload at every park in the system for a full year, which is less than half of one Disney character breakfast. And Glacier Park just dropped its vehicle reservation system for the first time since 2019. So you don't have to trade your summer, you just have to trade a line and a turnstile for like Mammoth Cave or the shore of the Great Lakes, and you'll eat better out of that air fryer than you ever did out of that $219 character breakfast. And a child is never going to know the difference, right? One father described his young son's reaction on a low-cost trip, happy, collecting rocks and shells, and said that when the other kids boast about Disneyland, his boy will say, "Yeah, but look at my cool shells and rocks," right? So the entire product that Disney is charging $450 a day to simulate, sitting out there in the real country for the cost of a tank and a gas and a willingness to go find it. So if nearly 80% of the cost increase at Disney came from charging for things that used to be free, is the problem that vacations got more expensive, or that one of the most trusted family brands in America figured out how to meter the magic? When a company sends its most loyal customers a survey asking whether they expect an inheritance or a death in the family, what does that reveal about who the product is now built for? 45% of parents borrowed money to take their kids to Disney. What does a child absorb about money and joy when the best day of the summer arrives on a credit card? The Morgans from the Wall Street Journal, they cut their trip in half. They ended up at national parks and Mammoth Cave. Is this a downgrade, guys? Is it actually a downgrade, or did the price spike accidentally point a family at something better than what they were originally buying? So if the shared American vacation is splitting into a premium tier for the top and a campground for everyone else, what does the country lose when families of different incomes no longer share the same memories? If you're just tuning in the Wake Up America show, I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Silver Dollar City, steal your Dollar City. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. We're glad and thankful to have you here. Yes. Can you make it tomorrow night in Vegas? Yes, I think so. All right. Sorry, responding to text messages. A lot of planning for my trip. I get to go to Las Vegas. Yay! Except I have to work the whole time. Boom. Stephanie and I, we did the numbers on what we have to, because we have to get up really early to set up our booth, and then we're packed with all these different events and things that we got to do. And it's oh man, I know nobody feels bad for us, but it's we have, between the time that we land at the airport tomorrow and the time that we have an event tomorrow night, we've got maybe 5 or 6 hours in Las Vegas to ourselves to do stuff. So we'll see what we can do during the day. She wants to go see the Washington movie, which of course we could see anywhere, but it's nah, whatever. Let's go see the Young Washington movie. We've got 2 tickets. Let's do it. All right, so let's talk about Gen Z. Well, a few weeks ago was opening night for a movie called Disclosure Day. This is Steven Spielberg's big UFO movie, the one that the critics praised above all for its sincerity. This is the old Spielberg faith that if you stare at the sky long enough, something up there might actually wish you well. A Fortune business editor sat in a theater and watched a row of 20-somethings render their verdict before the house lights came up. They called it boomer coded. Boomer coded. They saw the film Disclosure Day, and the young people thought it was boomer coded. They stamped it on the film and walked out on its sincerity, the way that you would walk past a guy handing out his dope CDs on the street, right? The same editor wrote something last year about the Gen Z stare, which is the blank, flat, deer at the drive-thru look that you get from a 19-year-old when you order a coffee. Have you guys seen this? The Zoomer stare. The research class spent all of 2025 explaining away the Zoomer stare as social anxiety or a freeze response or a cohort that missed its reps in lockdown and now needs our patience. So this morning, we're going to look right into the Gen Z stare, and we're going to consider their financial woes, unlike the boomers that they are at war with. We will have Maggie Moda at 8:30 a.m. on the Wake Up America show, but we're all going to get to poke fun at Camellia here in a little less than 10 minutes. So Camellia will be here first, and we're going to talk about the Gen Z stare turning into the Gen Z sneer at 8:30 a.m. Central. JJ says, over-financialization is a disease. Thank you, bud. Appreciate the tip. Speaking of, I love the irony of that, JJ. Jody Reckon says, the entire industry is waiting for us boomers to kick the bucket. A lot of industries, including the housing industry, are waiting for the boomers to kick it. Yeah. Well, the oldest members of this generation were between 8 and 13 years old during 2008 to 2010, the Zoomers, the foreclosure crisis. So that put 3.8 million American families out of their homes at its peak. So this is the foundational fact that's impacting the Zoomers. So these were not adults who made a bad bet. These were children who were watching their parents open an envelope at the kitchen table and go silent, changing schools mid-year, driving past a house that used to be theirs. The Wall Street Journal wrote about this woman named Kaylin, who was 24, who wrote into Fortune after reading the coverage. She grew up, I'm sorry, not the Wall Street Journal. She wrote into the Fortune magazine. And she grew up watching her parents come home wrecked from jobs that left just enough for dinners of ramen or orzo with onions. The lesson that burns in that age, of course, for these Zoomers is not an economics seminar. It's actually just shorter, that the deal of the economy was a lie, that we were jaded about employment, she said, before we ever entered the workforce. A starter home in this country now costs 87% more than it did in 2019, and the average new car runs $49,000, up 27% just since 2020. So this isn't an abstract inflation figure. These are the two purchases that have defined arrival into adult American life for 80 years: the house, the car, right? The American dream. And both ran away from a working wage inside of a single presidential term. So the hard edge of this is in the ownership data. Only 4.5% of Gen Z owns a home today, against 73% of boomers. This is the widest generational ownership gap ever recorded. And the median age of a first-time buyer just hit an all-time high of 40. So a generation can read a price tag. You can't therapy somebody out of arithmetic. There was an analysis of hiring that was done from 2019 to 2024 that found that entry-level hiring fell by more than half across every sector, while mid-level and senior hiring came roaring back. You hear that? Listen to that again. Mid-level and senior hiring came roaring back. So the ladder still works fine for everybody already standing on top of it. It's the bottom rung, the one that every career in this country is supposed to start on, that somebody went and sawed off. And the part that just stops you cold when you think about this is who else is helping saw it. So the same corporations crying about a labor shortage are handing the entry-level work to software and then telling a 22-year-old with a degree that he lacks experience for a job that no longer exists. So the problem is not that the young won't climb. The problem is that there's no rung to grab. There's no ladder. 57% of this generation believes that they were set up for financial failure. Only 32% still think the American dream is attainable. Less than half. More than 70% say survival spending is simply their financial normal. And here's the cruelest twist on this story is that Kaylin is one of the few who actually won. So she skipped college to dodge the debt. She got her GED, lived with her family until she was 21, saved like a miser, and then she bought a house. She calls herself one of a rare and fortunate few, and she's still furious because she says everywhere she turns, the people handing out the opportunities are exploitative and drilling deeper into a broken system. The comfortable commentators reach for the word entitled, but entitlement assumes you expect something you did not earn, and this cohort expects nothing. That's not entitlement. This is surrender. The real carpenter who sawed the rung off, of course, wasn't the free market. It was Federal Reserve policy. Washington made the reckless banks whole. It pinned interest rates at zero for nearly a decade. They conjured up trillions into the financial system under a name built to glaze your eyes over: quantitative easing. Now, the money didn't fall like rain on a field. This money was pushed into the assets that rich people and old institutions already owned, stocks and houses. And the proof that this is correct is frozen into the market right now. More than 60% of outstanding U.S. mortgages carry a rate below 4%. So they locked in during the cheap money years, which means the people who already own will never sell, and the inventory that a young couple needs stays bolted shut inside of that boomer equity. So a free market would have let prices fall back to where they could buy in. But the policy, the official government policy, has inflated them out of reach on purpose. JJ reminds us that everything new is not well made. Paper cuts on feature and missed mistakes. Okay, so I'm running out of time here. I've got more for you, but Maggie Moda is going to cover this topic anyway, so we will discuss this more at 8:30 a.m. on the Wake Up America show. Keep those Rumble rants coming. Thank you, JJ. Thank you, Byron. I appreciate your generosity. Helping fuel the next phase of the For Liberty Network. Do us a favor, while I'm on my commercial break getting Camellia all set up, head on over to forlibertyshop.com. That's the number forlibertyshop.com, guys. You'll see the brand new merch, the Anti-Socialist Social Club, available at forlibertyshop.com. We'll be right back with Camellia Peterson, talk about why she's getting absolutely bombarded by the Democrats on her Facebook page. It's hilarious. We're going to have a good time. We'll talk about that and more. This is the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
The left in America tells us not to have kids to save the planet, but in Cuba, they stopped having kids because the state destroyed the earth.
Collectivism doesn't. And I said this on this show many, many years ago, because this is my 10th year on the show, and I said there are times when I walk into a community and I see American flags all over the community, and I suddenly feel unsafe because there is a section of this country that has co-opted the American flag, and they equate being an American or an American flag with white supremacy, and that should never be the symbol of white supremacy.
Jesus H. and Mary and Joseph. Welcome to the Wake Up America Show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Camellia Peterson is here, but we are of no relation. Hi, Camellia.
Good morning. Peterson with an E-N.
Hey, how was your Independence Day, Camellia?
It was really great. So I know this is going to be hard to believe, but I walked in a parade for the first time ever.
Oh, that's fun. That's kind of cool.
It was in the town of Marshfield, which is supposed to be the longest running parade west of the Mississippi. So they've been going there for 170 some years or so.
Yeah, I didn't get video of the event, but I got the audio because a bunch of Democrats showed up to boo you. Here they are. This is the audio representation of every time that Camellia makes a post on Facebook these days, she's getting inundated, absolutely overrun by Democrats. And this is just me
and Ratio are like this.
Yeah, you're getting the ratio. So, Camellia, we're glad to have you here today. I know you're pushing hard for Amendment 4 and Amendment 5 Missouri. We've talked about them quite a bit on the show, and we'll talk about them a little bit more. But what's going on? I mean, people are talking about a lot of out-of-state money coming in. Do you think that what's happening, are you getting a lot of bots? Is this like, are the Democrats spending a lot of money to do a lot of like smear campaigns against people like you? What's happening?
So I'm a little conflicted as to whether or not there are actually bots, right? I mean, there are some times where it seems like, but I do think too that some of these people, it is the same people that show up over and over again, right? I can trust on the same basically 5 accounts on Twitter anyway, to just like everything I post that's remotely related to that, like they're going to like say something. And usually it's the same thing every time, right? And on Facebook, it's a little... Facebook gets worse than Twitter because, that's where our boomer voting demographic is. And I'm telling you what, like the boomers, I know you're talking a lot about the boomers, and not all boomers, hashtag not all boomers, right? But on Facebook, it's really been the boomers that have come after me on a lot of this, and even former state representatives. And I'm like, if there is anything that demonstrates Missouri's blue history, like that's it, because it's not been all that relatively long since we were blue, and so you really see it come out right now. But yeah, and I think that what's funny is apparently my stuff is just showing up in Democrats' feeds now, which is hilarious to me because the algorithm is just feeding it to them. I'm like, and they follow me. I'm like, you really could protect your peace here, and you're not going to like what you see, so why do that?
Yeah, well, it's because you're advocating in favor of for a yes on Amendment 4, a yes on Amendment 5, which for our listeners who haven't been following closely or maybe missed our segments, Amendment 4 makes it harder to amend the Missouri Constitution because our Constitution in Missouri is just overrun with all kinds of gobbledygook, and it's far too easy to amend the Constitution. So we're not making it impossible to amend the Missouri Constitution, just that instead of having like a regular majority to amend the Constitution. Missouri is a very rural state, but we have these blue cities, and because of their mismatched population, that we can be dominated by liberals, liberal boomers in Kansas City and St. Louis. So the Amendment 4 would make it so that you have to actually have a majority of people in every region of the state. So that means that rural people, who are the majority of the people in the state overall, they would be the ones who actually have a say in what happens in their constitution too. We're not going to be ruled by the blue metros. So that's Amendment 4. Yeah. And then Amendment 5 is a phasing out of the income tax, which, ideologically we're for, but God, Camellia, they lie. They say that that we're going to have an income tax and a sales tax, that by abolishing Amendment 5, or by abolishing the income tax here in Missouri, that we're going to have higher taxes across the board. It's just not true.
Right. And here's the thing, this election cycle is so friggin' weird. It is, I thought it was I thought it was gonna be better than 2 years ago with the whole presidential cycle. It's actually worse in Missouri anyway. And I think it's because of several of these issues. But the same people that are opposing Amendments 4 and Amendments 5 are also opposing Amendment 3, which will be on the ballot in November. So it's not on the same ballots, but coming up. And it's still it's wild because even some of those fringe people on the right that are opposing these things are also opposing Amendment 3, which would save babies, because that's for our listeners who don't know, 2 years ago, Missouri, by the ballot initiative process, passed the most expansive open up abortion up to birth, policy in the country. And so, the legislature, because that went into the Constitution, the legislature's hands are tied to do anything about it. They can try to do things through previous statute, as far as, and regulations as far as how clinics conduct their business and the requirements on them and things like that.
Let's talk about this because, this is what I wanted to get into, because so Judge Zhang actually did what he did this week. What changes for Missourians is that one judge in one county just voided 40 laws passed by the people's elected legislature. So set aside the abortion question for a second. Just from a purely structural separation of power standpoint, what does it tell you? What does it tell you that a single circuit judge has that kind of power over an entire statutory scheme?
That's right. And and I guess this speaks to another problem that Missouri has. So many states, so a lot of your viewers probably live in states that have or have had the Missouri plan, which is the method for selecting the judges, particularly in the upper levels, Supreme Court, appellate courts, those sort of things. And so basically the way it's set up, it in essence skews the decisions, the selections to the left, and which is not reflective at all, of course, of Missouri as a state. But we unfortunately started this thing, like lots of things, started with good intentions, and turns out it's not very good. So that is kind of another separate issue, but it contributes to this because we have seen many things in Missouri undone by the courts, good conservative policies. And in fact, it was the courts that essentially, after voters did vote for it through the IP process, the courts basically fell through and did not uphold to the effort to undo that, because it was just not it was just not constitutional. It wasn't legal. And so the legislature tried to do their part, and just not fund Medicaid expansion. But the courts again said, you have to do that. So we have a whole mishmash of bad policies and precedent that have affected all of these things in Missouri.
So Amendment 3, this passed in 2024. Now, the left is saying that this ruling that the judge made is simply the voters' will being enforced. How do you respond to the argument that the judge is doing what Missourians asked for at the ballot box?
Sure. Well, I think this goes back to why we even are messing with Amendment 4, right? As far as how the initiative process works. Because when you talk about outside money and you talk about how these things are presented to people, I think, it ironically was Amendment 3 2 years ago too, which, blew the doors wide open on abortion here. But there were two things I think at play here. First of all, the campaign in favor of that 2 years ago was hugely deceptive, right? I mean, obviously it's going to be that way. And they're talking, it's all about women's health and everything. But because voters do not see the entire text of what was in that amendment, you're relying on the courts who constantly rewrite what you see on the ballot. Like, you're relying on them to give the voters an accurate representation of what that amendment does. And they did not. I mean, and so people, walked in there and, thinking that this was going to be better, but they didn't know that this also legalized, mutilating kids. And, it wasn't just abortion. There were lots of things in there. And so, and on the other hand, too, like Missouri has become, prior to that, one of the most, pro-life states in the country. And it was very, very restrictive, and it had reached the point of like no exceptions, no everything. So I think that we had a perfect storm of that. When Roe v. Wade, right? I mean, that's why we're here. Roe v. Wade was overturned, and that threw it back to the states. And that meant that the fight had to go to the state. And that's why we were there 2 years ago. So I think it was just a perfect storm of a couple of different things. But the initiative process was just, it was just incredibly deceptive.
Now, the judge kept one requirement in place, Camellia, which is the in-person visit to confirm gestational age and rule out an ectopic pregnancy, but they struck the rest. So what do you think that says about like drawing that specific line about where this goes,
If they did not do that, can you imagine okaying to send somebody abortion pills or prescribe them without even knowing for sure that they're pregnant, right? With just going off of, a stick you buy in the drugstore. So I can't that is like, I think the very minimum line, the standard that they could have met was, having to make sure that they're what you're doing, because those medications can have some serious side effects for women. And we probably don't talk about that enough, but the risk is very high with taking those abortion pills.
That scary stuff, honestly. So for years, the ban was in place. Guttmacher estimates Missouri women traveled to Illinois and Kansas for about 12,000 abortions in 2024 alone. And out-of-state providers were already mailing roughly 300 pills a month into the state. So did the ban ever actually function as a ban, or did it really just export the activity across state lines, Camellia?
Yeah, I think that was one of the big arguments, right, is where people, because in St. Louis, like literally Planned Parenthood just set up shop right across the border, huge clinic, right? I mean, like that's all you had to do was drive across the border. And I'm sure that's the case. The opposition side that is in favor of abortion is going to tell you that that the rate went down, and it probably does go down because it makes it less convenient, right? But when people really want to get something done, they're going to find a way to do it. And so I don't doubt those numbers at all.
Camellia, we live in the world of individual liberty, of limited government. If there are principled people inside our coalition that land in different places on the abortion thing. Sure. So just because it's interesting, I mean, how do you personally think about the tension between the pro-life position and then the leave me alone government instincts that we have?
I think it goes back to founding principles. The role of government is to protect life first and foremost, right? I mean, that's your life is an innate individual right. So, I think
the Democrats would argue that means free health care.
Well, okay. Yes, that's true too, I'm sure. But I don't this is where we get into this gray law area, right? And so where do you draw the line? What is healthcare? Like we can go down this rabbit hole, right, all day. Like that's, is it therapy services because that's going to, prevent suicide? Like you're not wrong. Like that argument does go all the way down there. But I do think that, here's the deal. Like we're not, when you are talking about, say healthcare and medical services, and free healthcare, you're like somebody's providing that. It's not just the government providing that. That's you and me providing that for everyone else. But when you're talking about whether or not the state has a role in allowing murder. Like, I think these two things are on different fields here, right? I mean, because you really are talking about taxpayer responsibility for someone else versus whether or not you allow somebody to walk next door and shoot their neighbor and say that's okay, right? I mean, because that's, you know, it used to be several years ago, you would see in some of the pro-life things that would go out there, some of them would take a little bit more of a controversial stance, and they would, you know, make memes and posters like, would it be better if we just used a gun, right? I mean, like, and the point was to be shocking, like, if it's okay to kill a baby medically in the womb, like, is it okay to just kill it any other way too? So I think there's a big difference there, but fundamentally, I think this boils down to protecting life. And I think that is a fundamental responsibility of government. That said, we are in a position where we have to ask the question, can you legislate everything away if you are losing the cultural battle? And I think if you don't, that it's really hard to you know, set those standards through law completely if you don't have a moral people to abide by those laws. Eventually, you know, the imbalance will come into play. And I think that to a certain extent, that's what we see in a lot of states, is that people are just not, like, in their head and their hearts, like, they're not there. They think, and I think that what we will see on the ballot this November is, I really do think we'll see Amendment 3 pass. Because it doesn't make the abolitionists, you know, happy, right? Because it does allow for exceptions. And I believe it's up to maybe 12 weeks. I'm not sure if I have that right. So it's not a perfect law, and it doesn't completely protect life, but they also had to think about what can you pass? And that speaks to where the voting constituency is at.
How can you have such a strong belief in morality and be pro-life if you don't believe in God? Without God, there's no concept of morality.
You do want to go down that rabbit hole, don't you?
Well, that's the most the truth is that question is the most commonly asked question. At any of the events. It's like, it's only the biggest elephant in the room, Camellia. Everybody asks me that question whenever I go anywhere. Everybody they probably ask you the exact same thing. How can you have such strong convictions if all we are is just literally a clump of cells, Camellia? How can you have such a strong pro-life conviction? Why not just let someone destroy that? If it's literally, there's no soul, then there's no meaning. So how can you have all these strong convictions without a belief in a God that handed you that morality?
So I would go back to, and you know, not all primitive cultures, you know, were like this, right? But there are parts of the Bible that talk about, you know, just very briefly touch on, you know, what about the people that never had any exposure to God or to religion or anything else? And I do think we've seen a lot of, you know, primitive cultures that don't have that exposure, that kind of create their own religion, so to speak, their own traditions around that. But I think in all of those things, all of those cultures, you do see a respect for life. And part, you know, I mean, you can get into the deep philosophical conversation. Does that come out of a sense of self-preservation, right? I mean, like, I do think that that innate sense of self-preservation and caring for, you know, your progeny, like all of those things, I do think come in an innate sense of who we are as humans. I remember when you ran for Senate in Missouri, like, you're right, that was one of the biggest things. And the great irony, I guess, was my friend Kathy Jo Loy, right, who's now a state representative, was one of the people who was supporting you. And I know and I know she got a lot of questions because people had a really hard time wrapping their heads around the concept that someone could be agnostic but still be staunchly pro-life. And I think it really opened up a lot of people's minds to thinking about life, honestly, because it was never, ever a winning argument for the right that, we don't kill babies because the Bible says so. Like, there are more reasons than that. I mean, there are scientific reasons for it. And so I think that, that really, your run and bringing that conversation out in the right really did a lot of people good. And because that was always a weakness on the right. And what we see now is because there are people on the left, there are progressive people who have taken up the pro-life charge because for all of those reasons that have nothing to do with religion, they believe that life is precious. And they are the ones who are taking up what the Christians used to do. And they're protesting at the abortion clinics, and they're talking to the women going in and making sure that they feel supported and knowing that they don't have to do that and they can save those babies, and they're going to jail for it. So it's an interesting, turn of the tables, but I think there are a lot of reasons outside of that.
Great answer. C. Songaroth over in the chat asks, why did CJ laugh so hard when she mentioned your run for office? Great question.
Laugh so hard.
Camellia, if you guys want to have a good laugh at Camelia's expense, then make sure you follow her over on Facebook, where she's getting ratioed by Democrats every day. Camellia, is there anything else you want to share with our audience before we let you go?
One of the things that I had to come to, like, I lost my mojo a little bit right here a little while back, right?
Really?
And I think that we all kind of go through that, and you're just like, there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic. And I guess that's what I got my mojo back, by the way. But that's what I would say to everybody is there's so many reasons to be optimistic. There's so many great things that are happening in our country. And it's really, really important with all of the negativity out there that we focus on the positive, because I have a ton of negativity in my timelines right now. I just it is a choice to stay positive. And so I would encourage you all to make that choice with me.
Camellia Peterson, she's got her mojo back, baby. Appreciate you very much, CJ. Thanks for fighting for our freedom, and glad to hear you got your mojo back. Have a good one. Bye.
Yeah, baby.
Hi, I'm Dixie. Dixie Normus.
We've got our mojo back, baby. Yeah. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. If you aren't having fun this morning, then get out. We are all having a blast. We've still got a lot more fun to go. Don't go away. Don't go anywhere. Just go to the For Liberty shop and help us to unlock that bonus content. Thank you to Steelbringer for his donation during the chat. If you guys are having a good time, drop those Rumble rants. Can you bless me with something? Oh, gosh.
Oh, gosh.
Money-wise, drop those Rumble rants and go to forlibertyshop.com. I'm telling you today, if you have not tried Benjamin Franklin's Electric Elixir, you guys are missing out big time. So grab a box of Founding Flavors coffee. Don't go away, because when we come back, we're going to hand the mic to somebody who lived the story of the Generation Z stare. Maggie Moda is going to talk to us about whether we got it right or whether the boomers are still missing the point. Stick around. It's the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network. 'Tis the year of our Lord, 1801. President Trump Jefferson casts his gaze o'er the sovereign Potomac and beholds a most wretched spectacle upon the waters. From the cursed shores of Tripoli and the welfare coffers of distant Minnesota comes the brazen Captain Ilhan Omar, commanding her fleet of Barbary pirates. She demands her ransom, billions in reparations. Yet one instrument of fortitude suffices, a steaming chalice of Jeffersonian Java, bold and unapologetic from For Liberty Shop. No more tribute to rogues, he thunders, and dispatches the Navy and Marines to smash Omar's fleet asunder. Trump Jefferson stands triumphant as Omar's plunder meets the end it deserved back in Minnesota. Jeffersonian Java, the coffee that gives true Americans the courage to refuse tribute and rebuke fraud. Procure yours at forlibertyshop.com and make America caffeinated again. George Washington spent 8 years making sure nobody knew where he was. Troop movements, secret dispatches. The man was a ghost. So when a barista leaned out a window and asked for his exact location in exchange for points they called stars, he looked at his flag and said, "I've already got my stars. 13 of them. Keep your dignity and your location intact. Grab a box of Washington's Revolutionary Roast at forlibertyshop.com.
This is not merely coffee. 'Tis the very essence of American boldness. Give me coffee, or give me death. Go to For Liberty Shop to procure yours now.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking.
Welcome back to the Wake Up America Show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. It's time to rise in freedom, guys. Well, we opened the show this morning. We were talking about an article from Fortune magazine where this editor was calling out the Gen Z sneer. You might have heard of the Gen Z stare, but now they're calling out the Gen Z sneer. So the moment the famous blank stare hardened into something with teeth. So a whole generation that watched the foreclosure crisis from the back seat and decided that the deal of the economy and the American dream was all a lie before they've ever even clocked in for their first shift. We talked about the numbers this morning. Now we need a voice, a young voice. My next guest writes and speaks for her generation. She is sharp. She doesn't flinch. And she's not going to let me get away with anything as a geriatric millennial. Young Voices commentator Maggie Moto, welcome back to the show. Good to see you, Maggie. How are you?
So great to see you too, Austin. I am fantastic today. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks so much for joining us, Maggie. So let's start with what I was talking about earlier. There was a row of 20-somethings who were sitting in a movie. They were watching a Steven Spielberg film, and they called it Boomer Coded and walked out. So as somebody inside the generation, is that a sneer, or are we reading into something that isn't there?
Recording in progress.
You know, I think Gen Z reacts with a certain level of contempt towards many things. I think we live in this, post-ironic time. Everything is terrible all at once, right? What was the Steven Spielberg movie? Can you tell me a little bit more about this I can maybe decode this for you?
It was called Decision, or like Decision, not Decision Points.
Decision Day.
Decision Day, yeah. And
Yes.
it's your classic Steven Spielberg film. There's aliens. They stare up into the sky. They have like these warm and fuzzy feelings. And the young people who have been watching that are saying it's boomer coded, right? Which, we come out of it. Spielberg comes out of that different time, right? E.T. and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. These were films that sort of defined their generation. And it just I think what the Zoomers were essentially saying is that they didn't feel like the movie really expressed how their generation feels. I wonder if you feel the same way. If you go to the box office and see some of these old filmmakers and decide that they don't really represent you. I know there have been a couple of Zoomer hits in the last year, like Back Rooms and I'm trying to remember the other name of the one.
Right.
The Psycho Obsession.
And
There you
yes,
go.
I would love to dig into why these newer movies really resonate with my generation. But I will say this, I think it's Disclosure Day, right? That's the name of the film.
Yes.
Is this, correct me if I'm wrong, this is like his attempt to understand Gen Z and kind of make a movie about us? That I think is where, older generations miss the mark. Because I think for Gen Z, we really do feel like if you haven't grown up with us and experienced this with us, then maybe you don't have the full picture. However, I mean, Gen Z can be very self-righteous, right? And we don't like older generations criticizing us or even really like victimizing us, even though we love to victimize ourselves. We love being misunderstood, right? So that makes sense to me. I think there's probably what the reaction there is against, an older generation trying to make sense of us. I also think Gen Z feels that these older generations are the ones who caused all of our woes and our problems. And so maybe it's too little too late. Like we grew up kind of on an unregulated internet with unregulated internet access. This is where the stare comes from, right? We have watched the world go up in flames. We've been overexposed to too many negative news items. We're coming into a financial situation where many of us fear that we cannot own homes, or afford college or afford healthcare. And this is after decades and decades and decades of bad policy decisions led by older generations. And a lot of the time, those generations will say, we've had it hard in the past too. And that's true. But Gen Z doesn't necessarily want to hear this, right? And older generations had it hard in a different way than I think Gen Z does. Gen Z, a lot of these people that are online that are voting for Zohran Mamdani's grew up upper middle class, had access to basically everything they could ever hope for, and believe these products. Everyone thinks that they should be living a luxury lifestyle. And so in order to keep up with that, we're kind of impoverishing ourselves. Older generations look at this and say, well, you should just stop doing that. Which
just stop doing that. Yeah, just stop.
It's fair.
Stop. I mean, maybe you should stop doom scrolling, honestly, because it is messing with your psychology a little bit.
Absolutely. But I mean, you also have to recognize like this is a generation that grew up online. It's not just Gen Z that's getting lonelier, it's every generation. New studies have come out showing that literally every generation is getting lonelier and spending more time alone. And so it's not just us. Like this is just the easy, comfortable way we can live now, but it's causing a lot of, deeper rooted problems. I think I saw this YouTube video and it was really resonating with people in my generation who are not political like I am. And this girl was saying, you should stop trying to live a frictionless life. And I think that sort of messaging is starting to really resonate with us because things have almost become too easy. And we need people to tell us like that are from our own age group that it's important and necessary to incorporate some friction into our lives. And one of those ways we can start living a life with more friction and therefore more fulfillment is maybe by not spending so much and maybe delaying some consumption so that we can have things like a house down the road.
That's a really good point. And Camellia was just telling me that her daughter and her boyfriend, they had scrimped and saved and put together like $15,000 or $20,000 to be able to buy a house. Now they forego all these amenities. The newest iPhone. They can't buy. They're not getting avocado toast, I would guess. But asking people to sacrifice anything anymore just seems like a tall order. Like I kind of recognized this phenomenon recently online when we were looking at like Zoran Mamdani was saying that you have to set your thermostats to 78 in New York City. Now, obviously he's a communist, and communists are always telling us that we need to go without. And so when I made some kind of snide remark about it online, there was a conservative woman who was like, well, whenever you're in a crisis, what's wrong with asking people to cut back? And I kind of like tried to balance it out and think to myself, okay, well, if they are in a crisis, now you and I know that this is because they shut down their nuclear reactors and they refuse to build the kind of energy that would sustain New York City. You know this quite well. Yes. But the fact is that, I mean, we shouldn't have to cut back on consumption because, in theory, if people listen to your and my economic ideals, this would be a country of superabundance. Absolutely. rather than just relative abundance to the rest of the world. But we don't live in the Great Depression times. We don't live in a time we see people consuming. So I can imagine that this does affect your psychology because it's confusing.
Yeah. This is a great point, Austin. And I was really thinking about this the other day. I was having a conversation with one of my coworkers and, how can we brand saving money to be attractive and appealing to Gen Z? And, maybe we call it friction maxing and everyone starts trying to friction max.
That's not bad.
But, this kind of what you just said is so important. And it's that actually this desire to consume is not necessarily a bad thing, right? What makes it a problem is when you aren't creating at the same level you're consuming, right? There's a spiritual deficit that happens and a financial deficit that happens when you are not creating at the level you are consuming. And so really what we should be talking about is unleashing more creativity and maybe making it easier for people to consume these more important items like buying a house, right? Like getting a college degree. And the way we do that is not by electing people like Zoran Mamdani, who's going to make everything 10 times more expensive in the long run, right? We don't just keep piling on the problems to these industries like housing, like healthcare, like college, right? We don't keep doing the same things that have made things more expensive over time. We need to unleash the free market. And so Gen Z can consume all we want and live this life of abundance, which is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to want to eat nice French cheeses and luxury jams and go on vacation to Europe. Like there's nothing wrong with that. And branding it as something problematic that's unique to Gen Z is, I think that's where it gets kind of patronizing and where Gen Z just says, okay, this is boomer talk, right?
Well, it kind of is because I love the memes where you'll see the boomers doing the little line dancing, and they'll be like, "Wow, POV, you're lecturing Zoomers about going without or saving to buy a home, even though you bought your house in 1976 for a case of blueberries."
Exactly. This generation inherited an amazing economic situation and then handed off a really terrible one. However, in the meantime, there were still all of these industries that were allowed to operate in a mostly free market. And that's why we have access to so many incredible goods and services that we can buy. And they're really not that expensive. They're becoming more expensive because our dollar has been devalued so much.
Now that's my next point, Maggie. Let's get on that, actually. I'm glad you brought it up. JJ4884 says, good cheese is available at Kroger, and there is the bargain box. Thank you, JJ. Now,
yes, I know what you're talking about, JJ.
Yes,
I stopped that
before. She knows the good cheese. Okay, so, I mean, Maggie, you were just a kid when this was going on. I remember 2008. I don't know. You must have been in elementary school or something at this point. But I was in Washington, D.C. in 2008 when they were doing the first round of bailouts in the transition between George W. Bush and Barack Obama. And I remember sitting in the room it was all conservatives. And the conservatives were the ones who were advocating for the government to step in and to redistribute the wealth by have the Federal Reserve print the cash that was necessary and give it directly to the banks. And I will never forget that there was this old guy there at the time, and I was the young libertarian, wearing like my motorcycle jacket at this meeting of conservatives, so like trying to stick out like a sore thumb, my Ron Paul years. And I asked this guy, I was like, would you take out a loan in your children's name in order to shore up your losses in the stock market? And he was like, yes, I would. Because they were desperate because they were losing money hands over fist. The value, these were people who were like flippers. So they were losing their shirts in all of their investments in their homes. And people like myself for the first time were like, oh my God, how homes are affordable for the first time ever. And they lost their shit and they demanded that the government step in. And the government did step in and printed trillions of dollars of cash to prop up the home prices. And now we're just stuck and we're frozen. So, I mean, Generation Z has, in some ways, a righteous anger, but the problem is that it's really hard to get young people pissed off at quantitative easing, I would imagine.
Yes, absolutely. And by the way, that's why we're still encountering this housing market that we are today. I don't know if you remember even Donald Trump himself saying, we don't want housing prices to drop too much because then people wouldn't get such a big return on their investment. Housing should not really be an investment. I don't know that housing should depreciate the way a car does, but it should look more similar to that than, this stock basically that you can buy that just goes up forever, right? That's not how homes should work. We shouldn't think of homes as a financial investment in that it's like a money-making scheme. But the boomer generation absolutely does think of it this way. And I think this is at the root of NIMBYism and what's keeping, people from building homes. But I will say we've seen the proof is in the pudding when the next housing crisis kind of came around in 2020, where all of these homes were getting bought up, home prices were shooting up like crazy across the country. We saw that certain states, specifically in the Sun Belt, started building a lot of new neighborhoods, right? Specifically Florida, Austin, Texas. These places actually responded to the demand by increasing the supply of homes. And now most of the homes that are on the market are sitting in those places and home prices are being driven down. And so, the investor might freak out at that and say, oh my gosh, like this is a horrible situation for me. But for home buyers like me, potentially in a few years, I live in New York City, so there's no way I'm buying a home right now.
You're not buying a house.
That would be a terrible financial decision right now.
Yeah.
And completely unfeasible, right? But in a few years, like that is going to really help me, right? But it does seem like what we have right now, and we talked about this last time we spoke, Austin, this huge surge of DSA membership, the Democratic Socialist takeover of the Democratic Party. This is a reaction of the young against the old. It's not just a class warfare, it is a generational warfare. And it's kind of scary because instead of my generation maybe doing a little bit more digging into what actually caused all of these problems, we are just taking the policies that led us here and supercharging them. And so, I don't want to hand my future kids, God willing, this big bill for them to pay. But that's what's going to end up happening. And I think at the end of the day, we did not do enough to properly educate people on this economic history of how we ended up in this situation. And so, you know,
Maggie,
it is
what
still kind of our fault.
housing prices, if we want them to come down, how about mass deportation? How do you feel about that idea as a concept? If they won't let us build houses, we could empty them out.
I mean, if we're looking at this from an economic equation, right, you're lessening the demand on the market. However, it is not a permanent solution to the housing crisis, because ultimately what is causing the housing crisis is not a huge surge in demand. It's a restricted supply, and it's these laws, and it's not just one law. Like, you can't just write one law to fix the housing crisis. You need to go into states and localities and remove tons and tons and tons of regulations and restrictions that make it really, really costly to build homes, and make it basically only feasible to build these really large homes that my generation is not really asking for. But back to the 2008 crisis, you know, my generation does not remember this. Like, maybe we have ingrained memories, you know, deep in our subconscious of this great recession, but really all we've known are maybe the Obama years, definitely the Trump years. All we've really known, and specifically with the Trump years, we've just known that there is no real, like, free market movement, basically.
Yeah.
Like, the Ron Paul years are not even ingrained into my generation's collective memory.
Yeah, I noticed that your generation skipped the libertarian phase entirely and went straight to like right-wing authoritarianism or left-wing authoritarianism. There was no libertarian phase at all with these young kids.
Yeah, I mean, some people I hear from say, you know, oh, I was a libertarian when I was 16 and then I grew up, right?
I supported Austin Peterson for president when I was 12.
Yeah. And I mean, let's be clear, there is a small libertarian movement among young people, but it really hasn't been in vogue for quite some time. And, you know, I think, again, that comes down to education. The libertarian movement didn't really capture this online energy at the right time.
Well, you know where they went? You know where they went? They went to Candace Owens and like Tucker Carlson. Yeah. They went to like the Alex Jones stuff. They all got like caught up in all of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about what's enticing from an advertising perspective, like sex, drugs, drama, gossip, all of these things capture our attention. What doesn't capture our attention is economics. So
it's not sexy. It's not that sexy. Yes.
There's kind of an ingrained problem here.
I remember, I'll say this. I remember a shirt that people used to wear in the Liberty Movement that said, real economists do it with models. And like that was as sexy as it got.
Yeah. And that's like a nerd joke, right? Like that. I mean, the reason some of these figures have been so successful is because they're capable of being incredibly subversive, which is inherently appealing to people that have grown up on the internet. I think really everyone, but you know, much of my youth was spent going down rabbit holes and like figuring out what people think and like exploring weird subcultures online. And, you know, I love like stumbling across a Reddit, like a subreddit where I can, you know, like see what people think that are really different from me. There's just something very alluring about that.
This is why we need like a Javier Milei. This is why we need somebody like him, because, you know, he's obviously libertarian, but he also has like a cultural appeal that I think a lot of American libertarians don't have.
Yes, exactly. And so, you know, I spend a lot of my time thinking about what Gen Z thinks and what Gen Z wants. And It's ever evolving. I think one of the most important things to know about us is we've just been fed so many pieces of information. Like, it is really hard to comprehend how much info we have been fed over time, which is why you don't really see many like real true subcultures anymore. Like, you don't have the jocks and the nerds and the geeks and the this and the that. You have people that are like weird Frankenstein amalgamations of all of these very, very, very niche subcultures. And
although I am glad to see, though, that the goth baddies are back. So at least that subculture is still sticking around. Now, Maggie, I want to give you the opportunity to plug what you're doing over there at Young Voices. We got to wrap it up. So please share with us what you're doing. I know you moved to New York City, so if you have any announcements or things you want to share, now's your chance.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Young Voices, I am creating content. So check out the Join Young Voices page on all the social media platforms. We're also relaunching a podcast soon, and I think that's going to be really, really interesting and entertaining and insightful. And I'm going to be the host of that. So, keep up with me on social media to see when that launches.
And of course, Maggie Moda joins us regularly here on the Wake Up America show, and we're so grateful that she's so generous with her time. Hey, Maggie, good luck with Zoran Mamdani there in New York City. All right, be careful.
Thank you so much. I'll do my best.
All right, Maggie Moda. Give her a follow over on X at Maggie Moda. We appreciate her very much. Today was a great show. It's the last show until we get back from Las Vegas. So if you guys are hoping to see us tomorrow morning, we will not be here. I'll make an announcement over in the Discord so everybody knows, but we're out. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're out this week. We'll be back next Monday. You've still got the other shows on the network, so don't forget to check all those as well. You can find the full list of the Wake Up America shows, For Liberty Network shows, at wakeupAmericaShow.com. We're getting a new website soon to kind of bring us all together onto one website, so that should be great. What are you supposed to listen to in the morning? Glenn Beck? Oh, no, not Glenn Beck. Listen, you got Martin Shkreli is live right now. Steve Bannon, Narendra Modi, Prime Minister of India, is live right now. Alex Jones Network. Andy Opperman says I should bet on black. Wow, that puts us at we're only like $10 away from raising the bonus content. Tell you what, guys, if we raise another $10, you will unlock the bonus content. So if you want to see the mini documentary before we go, 10 more bucks donated. Yeah, we're only $89. So 11 more dollars, and you'll unlock the bonus content. Hell, I'll give it to you guys anyway. What do you say? You've deserved it. You earned it. Thank you, Andy. We'll be back next Monday. It's the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network. Thanks, guys. See you soon. In the town of Durnhall, Cheshire, England in 1732, a boy was born who would become one of the most controversial and divisive figures of the American Revolution. His name was Charles Lee. From a young age, Lee was drawn to military life. He joined the British Army as a teenager and served with distinction during the French and Indian War in North America. He fought in several campaigns and rose to the rank of lieutenant colonel. However, Lee was never content with the rigid structure of the British military. He was opinionated, sharp-tongued, and often clashed with his superiors. After leaving the British Army, Lee traveled across Europe and eventually settled in the American colonies in 1773. He purchased land in Virginia and quickly became involved in the growing resistance against British rule. Unlike many other Patriot leaders who had never worn a uniform, Lee brought real military experience to the table. When the Revolution began in 1775, the Continental Congress was desperate for experienced officers. Despite his British background, Lee offered his services and was commissioned as a Major General, second only to George Washington in rank. Many in Congress actually considered Lee more qualified than Washington at the time, and some even hoped he might eventually replace him. Lee served in the New York campaign in 1776, but his relationship with Washington was already strained. Lee was arrogant and often critical of Washington's leadership. He believed he should have been given overall command of the army instead of Washington.
In December 1776, while traveling through New Jersey with a small escort, Lee was captured by British forces. He was taken prisoner and held by the British for over a year. During his captivity, he wrote a plan for the British on how they could defeat the Americans, a document that would later damage his reputation. Lee was finally exchanged in April 1778 and returned to the Continental Army. By this time, Washington had proven himself as a capable leader, and Lee's influence had diminished. Still, he was given command of a large portion of the army during the Monmouth Campaign in June 1778. On June 28, 1778, at the Battle of Monmouth, Lee was ordered to attack the British rear guard as they retreated toward New York. However, when he encountered stronger British resistance than expected, Lee ordered a retreat. The situation quickly became chaotic. When Washington arrived on the field and saw American troops falling back in disorder, he was furious. Riding up to Lee, Washington reportedly demanded an explanation in a rare display of anger. The two generals argued heatedly on the battlefield. Washington then took personal command of the troops and managed to stabilize the line. The Battle of Monmouth ended in a tactical draw, but it became a major embarrassment for Lee. Following the battle, Lee demanded a court-martial to clear his name. Instead, he was court-martialed himself on charges of disobeying orders, misbehavior before the enemy, and disrespect toward the commander-in-chief. He was found guilty on all counts and suspended from the army for 1 year. Lee never recovered from the disgrace. Bitter and resentful, he spent the rest of his life attacking Washington and defending his own actions. He moved to Philadelphia and lived in relative isolation, surrounded by his many dogs. He died on October 2, 1782, at the age of 50. Charles Lee remains one of the most complicated figures of the American Revolution. He brought valuable military experience to the Continental Army at a time when it was desperately needed. However, his arrogance, ambition, and poor judgment, especially at Monmouth, ultimately overshadowed his contributions. While some historians argue that Lee was treated unfairly by Washington and Congress, most agree that his actions at Monmouth were damaging and that his later attacks on Washington were unjustified. He died a bitter and largely discredited man, remembered more for his failures than for his earlier service. Charles Lee, the British officer who became a major general in the Continental Army, only to fall from grace at the Battle of Monmouth.
'Tis the year of our Lord, 1801. President Trump Jefferson casts his gaze o'er the sovereign Potomac and beholds a most wretched spectacle upon the waters. From the cursed shores of Tripoli and the welfare coffers of distant Minnesota comes the brazen Captain Ilhan Omar, commanding her fleet of Barbary pirates. She demands her ransom, billions in reparations. Yet one instrument of fortitude suffices, a steaming chalice of Jeffersonian Java, bold and unapologetic from For Liberty Shop. No more tribute to rogues, he thunders, and dispatches the Navy and Marines to smash Omar's fleet asunder. Trump Jefferson stands triumphant as Omar's plunder meets the end it deserved back in Minnesota. Jeffersonian Java, the coffee that gives true Americans the courage to refuse tribute and rebuke fraud. Procure yours at forlibertyshop.com and make